not officially, but I had kind of like completely stopped playing 3 hours a week on average sort of thing. Just ended up, I guess getting back into tournaments especially and relatively higher stakes. I went to like a ep18 and it was like the first one I had gone to in a few years. I was like, oh, I remember what I like about this. I ran pretty decent and had a few runs, which obviously helps. Like maybe if I didn't have that, like I wouldn't have been as positively reinforced or whatever. A hobby that got like more and more serious over time, and it's something that you like really enjoy, and then you happen to be playing for money or whatever. Yeah, part of the enjoyment is being competitive and feeling like I don't know if belong is the right word, but like that I can compete with whoever's at the table. Basically, I like to kind of follow my gut, like for the most part, and I'll just sort of accept that like sometimes it's gonna look like really dumb or stupid or just be a punt,
All right, welcome David, not Jan, probably not Yan. Please pronounce your last name because we've had some trouble.
Yeah, I think in Mandarin it would be something like Yan.
Okay.
But everybody is like Yan.
My sensitivity around the issue is that I said David Jan at the table. You weren't around, but Sam Grafton, he looked down at me pretty hard. He gave me some shit and he said, no David Jan, what are you?
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to kind of start this off with a very different question. We usually delve into someone's backstory or my origin story with the guest, but I want to ask you about our peers to start. This is kind of a fun question that came from Pete Latham. If you know Pete Triton, the funny guy.
Of course.
Yeah, Pete's awesome. So I don't know why, but I don't think Seth and I didn't use this on the Chirp in a Chair podcast, but I like this question, which is build, a supreme high stakes poker player, like the best live high roller player you could imagine with, this person's deep stack expertise, this person's ability for live reads, et cetera. So I'm going to give you a bunch of topics. In the spirit of diversity, we're going to say you can only use a player once, so you can't just use Ike for everything, or whoever you think is the god. So number one, we're gonna say pre-flop knowledge.
Pre-flop knowledge. Let's go with Makita.
Makita, okay. Table presence.
Let's go with Ivy.
Ivy. Responding to unorthodox play or circumstances. So I'm going to say that's one. You've just got, Dao Min Fu ripping 100 big blinds on the button and you're in the small blind, second hand of the tournament. But also, 2 hole cards got exposed and you're playing a hand knowing that, the king of spades and 9 of diamonds are out.
Can we go with Ike for this?
Ike, nice. Out of the box creativity. So people who kind of go out of the box, play creative lines, put chips in strange spots, or checks.
Is this Triton players or just any? Or?
Yeah, high stakes tournaments. I mean, they don't have to have played Tritons if you think that they're just a fantastic, still high stakes online player.
We can go with Ponokov or Almanogno, who doesn't play Triton, but
ability to handle variance. Mentally, not financially.
Yeah. It's hard. I don't know. I guess, but I'm gonna guess Christoph.
Christoph, nice. Deep stack ability, 80 plus big blinds deep.
Let's go with Linus.
Feels like the pick. Study ethic.
Study ethic. Oof. I don't know. I was just like names are coming to mind, and I'm like Kuhn. I mean, I don't know if that's like the one thing he would want to be known for necessarily. I mean, it's definitely not a bad thing to be known for, but whatever.
I think he would. I think he loves it. Yeah. He
it's really definitely it's a compliment for sure. But is it the one thing he's famous for? I don't know, but whatever. That's fine. He's also very muscly,
He is very muscly. That one didn't make the cut in this installment of The Perfect Poker Player, but grind ethic, getting to the table, being there day after day.
There's so many. I don't know. Adrian.
Final table / ICM knowledge.
Jans Arons.
This is kind of a tricky one because it almost sounds like the culmination of everything, but that's not how I mean it. Ability to execute. That's execute based on what you know.
In general, or live poker, or
Live poker.
ability to execute. Let's go with Mikey Adamo.
Open-mindedness.
Pedro?
I like that one. It's good. Short/shallow stack play. Thinking chip EV.
I'm just trying to think, like, who like, for example, used to play a lot of cap and still does. Maybe Dvoress. Didn't use that one yet, so.
Nope. All right. So, editor, please build that picture, what it looks like with Makita, Haxton, Holtz, Adamo. You got a pretty good all-star crew there. You got a lot of legends in there.
Yeah, I feel a bit bad that I used a lot of kind of obvious picks, but
you've got a who's who of the Hall of Fame class of 2035. Moving to your background, because it's something I'm not terribly familiar with, so I'm interested in it. Because we certainly overlapped online. I remember Miss Oracle as a really good player. It's kind of, for me anyway.
Generous.
What's that?
No, I said that's generous, but thank you.
No, yeah, it was one of those. I was very not tuned in to what was happening in online poker, despite being an online pro. And you just start seeing a name, like, who's this? Just some random. Then eventually you kind of get a reg note on them. And then someone's like, oh yeah, that guy's really good. I'm like, really? And that was kind of my, and then from that point on, the people who told me Miss Oracle is a really good player, they know their shit. And and then I start seeing David Yan in live tournaments playing really high. So I'm curious from the other side, from the not so ignorant, the person who lived it. What was your path like?
Yeah, so I think a lot of elements of my background or poker story are kind of overlap with other people. So I basically, it's funny, I had this thing where I listen to other people talk about their story or their background, and then there's a lot of stuff of games, and even though I heard it many times, it took me until even kind of recently where I'm like, oh, that's actually me too. I'm just oh yeah, games, blah, blah. I didn't even think about it. But for me, it was a pretty big part of my, I guess, youth, childhood and stuff. I played a lot of Pokemon cards, pretty competitively. I played, by the time I got to high school, I played a lot of Dota. And also some other stuff like Neopets, blah, blah. Anyway, so Pokemon was a pretty big part of my teen years. I was playing relatively competitively, and I met a lot of my good friends through that, and to this day they're still my friends. And eventually they were mostly a little bit older than I, so by the time, let's say I was 15, 16, they were already in uni and that kind of thing. So eventually they found poker, and then they we were friends and we would hang out, and I learned poker with them or through them, the rules, and we just played pretty similar to a lot of other people, small stakes sit and go, small stakes cash games that became sort of $5, $10, 5 cent, 10 cent, that sort of stake. And then one of the crew was really crushing 1-2 online at the time, on PokerStars, and at the time I was like, holy shit, they're making so much, and also I enjoy playing and stuff, so I basically started as well, and kind of similar to a lot of people, I started at basically the smallest. I don't think I grinded free rolls, but I would have started at once. I think the first couple of deposits I was just doing really stupid bankroll stuff, but eventually I sort of started more or less grinding $1 sit and goes, I think whatever, micro cash, whatever. And I played a bit of various different games and stuff like this, and for quite a while I was mixing different formats. I mean, always Hold'em, nothing else. But I played a bit of most sit and goes, most tournaments, cash. I dabbled in short stack and stuff like that. But for the most part, I played 100 BB Zoom and stuff like this. So that was quite a while. And I did Supernova Elite, I think 3 times. 1 year, I think I was more or less the only person to do it with 50-50 cash and sit and goes, and also tournaments, I guess. So I was sort of between mid to high-ish stakes for quite a while, and still mixing formats and going. I had like a year where I'm like playing like Zoom to do Supernova Elite, and then like later on, maybe the next year I'll play something else, or I'll play Heads Up or whatever. And for the most part, I was like never particularly good at any game. I was kind of decent maybe at a few, but never like I was never like top of the pyramid at like even the stakes I was playing at any point ever, I would say. Yeah, and then at some point I even this story is kind of going everywhere. At some point I even kind of like I had periods where I played more or less as a lot of people do, and at some point I, not officially, but I had kind of like completely stopped playing. Even I would like not completely, but like playing 3 hours a week on average, sort of thing. This was during maybe in COVID. Yeah, I remember during COVID, everybody was like, "Oh my god, the games are so amazing! Like they're the best I've ever seen." You would look at like Google Trends and then like searching online poker, like the graph was just like this or whatever. And during that time, I did play a little bit, but like not that much, and nowhere near as much as a lot of like LPS and stuff like that. But somehow I ended up playing a bit more and kind of getting back into it. And it kind of happened kind of quickly, but I just ended up, I guess getting back into tournaments, especially and relatively higher stakes as well, both live and online. I went to like a ep18, and it was like the first one I had gone to in a few years. Like I think I did Aussie Millions 2020, and then maybe for 2 years or something didn't play any live, and then I went to like EP Barcelona, and I was like, oh, I remember what I like about this. Like, I ran pretty decent and had a few runs, which obviously helps. Like maybe if I didn't have that, like I wouldn't have been as positively reinforced or whatever. Yeah, I don't know if that.
Introducing the GTO LAB ICM Trainer. Train all positions at once. The new and better way of learning poker tournaments. Master all stages of the tournament. Pre-bubble, bubble, in the money, 2 and 3 tables left, and the final table. Learn how to crush tournaments from our coaches and get the most out of the trainer. We have the biggest ICM library ever, with over 14,000 solutions created by Nick Petrangelo and Daniel Dvoress. Join GTO Lab today and stay ahead of the curve.
Follow-up would be prior to COVID, and then during COVID, everyone's kind of at home, but what was it that took you away from poker? What were you spending your time doing?
Yeah, so for even a few years before that, I'd already started playing like a lot less in general. So I, had started a family, by now I have 2 kids and stuff. So I just generally wanted to start seeing, maybe like focus a bit on like other parts of my life or whatever, where like, I think for quite a few years I was, traveling a lot, playing a lot of poker, which was cool. But I think I wanted to try a bit of other stuff, not necessarily like officially never play again or anything like that, but just as I said, to see what else is, I guess, out there or whatever. And then in 2020, like a lot of people, I kind of was bored, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then I started getting back into my hobby of Pokemon cards, and just buying some to open and enjoy or whatever. And then I was like, oh, this is like something that like I did quite a lot in high school. Like, I used, I guess the local equivalent of eBay, stuff like that, to buy at a very small scale, just, more or less mostly as a hobby. But anyway, I was like, I think I can do better than the experiences I've had. And so I slowly started building up a local online Pokemon card shop, actually.
That's cool.
And for like a whole year, more than a year, actually, I was just working, I would say more than full time on it, like probably 50 hours, probably more, like 50 to 55 hours, maybe more if you include like online stuff. And then just sort of started from, I wouldn't say like nothing, but like started at least in terms of the store not existing, like, building it up from, basically from nothing. And that, that was sort of, that was what I was doing for like, I've been doing, like, I haven't stopped at any point, right? But I've reduced the amount of workload myself, but I'm still very much involved in that.
Talking about poker being your job, being a good portion of my job as well, what do you care about, and have you seen that change at all in terms of money, legacy, respect of your peers, notoriety, public, whatever things that some people might care about, titles. Because one of the things that I find compelling about poker is that even just the division between cash and tournaments, but even within tournament players and within cash players, I think it just means something really different to different people in a way that I think isn't as true of a lot of sports. I think there's more of a unifying theme when I think about sports fans.
So poker for me, I mean, I think it's actually similar for a lot of people, where it's really just been a hobby that got like more and more serious over time, and it's something that you like really enjoy, and then you happen to be playing for money or whatever. Where like, I think, as I said earlier, I've been thinking a lot about this reference to games that people, or at least a lot of players, keep making, that they grow up with games, they play games and stuff, and I really kind of relate to that, and I think, I don't know, in some ways, I mean, for better or worse, like, you end up just like gamifying a lot of stuff. It's like, that's why all these like stupid rewards programs are like addictive, because they've almost gamified it. You're like, oh, I want to get like the highest status in this rewards program, or whatever. Or I want to get the highest score in like this game or that game or whatever. And I think in some ways, poker is kind of like that. For me, it's just like a hobby that I really enjoy. I love to compete, at like a high level. Over time, it definitely has changed. Like, obviously, when I first started, it was sort of like, oh, maybe I can do this to support myself. It allowed me to like travel, pay for the expenses relating to travel, obviously. Like, in terms of what's important, over time that has changed a lot. I mean, I kind of started as, I guess, a kid, more or less, and still kind of a kid, but like less of a kid, and the different things mattered at different times. Like, at some points I really cared and wanted to be like, respected, especially like by my friends and stuff, but maybe the I guess peers in general, or the community in general. At some points, like, I wanted certain kind of external achievements, like certain stuff like titles or placings or stuff like that. I mean, not to the, like, there's a kind of a spectrum, right, where like I think some people like really wanted to like have a triple crown or have this many bracelets or that, and I didn't really, I'm not like on the top of the spectrum, but I definitely have cared at certain points, and I'm not saying I don't care anymore.
Sure.
It's at some points, like, I guess it's similar, but stuff like recognition, I did care more. These days, I think my priority is really just there's a few different things, but I think like enjoying it is honestly just pretty up there. Like, I don't know if it's number one, but like, enjoying it is, is very up there. And part of enjoying it is like being competitive. Like, for me, it's like important to sit there and feel like I can compete, and that I'm not like just like getting crushed or something like that. And part of the enjoyment is being competitive and feeling like I don't know if belong is the right word, but like that that I can compete with whoever's at the table, more or less.
Yeah. I like that. I think there's even a strategic component to it. I bring it up a lot to students when people are playing in a $5,000 or lower buy-in than that. One of your first jobs, in my opinion, is to figure out why these people are here, the people that you're playing against. Are they here to win titles? Are they here to accumulate chips? Are they here to make flushes? What are they here for? Because everyone's there for a different reason. And if you project, if you just assume everyone is there to maximize their EV and to, it's just like an insane idea if you're playing a 1K, for example.
Yeah, no, it's like a big part of, I guess, live poker. It's, I don't know if empathy is the right word, but basically understanding or having at least some idea, why people are there, as you say, and figuring out how they're likely to play and in different situations, especially in tournaments, which are quite dynamic and things are always changing. Some people like really want to cash, like maybe more than they should. Other people like don't care. Like, other people don't want to like look like they're like a pussy or something. I don't know if that's like politically incorrect these days, but like whatever. I mean, everyone is different, and on any given day, like the same person might have, I don't know, different motivations or different moods or whatever.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I use the word empathy about it all the time too. It might be the wrong word. I hope it's not, but I think just placing yourself in other people's shoes, it has almost a connotation that now you're going to do good for them, but no, this is a zero-sum game. I'm using it to exploit you. But it's a really important factor is to understand, like, that guy didn't bluff the river with a combo I would always bluff. Was it ignorance, or is he just a guy who's not going to pull the trigger in these situations time and again because he doesn't like to get caught bluffing? I think you have to be able to empathize with your opponents. It's something I find interesting when I hear a lot of the criticism of the best players in the world is often that, oh, these are like some nerdy guys with bad social skills. And it's like, it's a type of social skill to understand how people are thinking about games and then to use it against them. And that takes, a lot of emotional capacity. Granted, it's not going to help in other, areas sometimes, but I think it's really important for understanding people in adversarial situations.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, I think it's also something where, like, it's, sometimes poker can be a bit toxic, where people are, oh, this, XYZ is bad, they did this, or they didn't do this, whatever. But I think it's like very important. And I think most of the, I guess what you would call top players have a pretty good like understanding of the idea that it's like important to think about why people do what they do, regardless if you think it's a good play or correct or wrong or whatever. Like, they obviously have a reason for it. And in most cases, especially at like relatively higher levels, like, they are, a good player, I would say, or like an accomplished player. Like, they've had success, like they're definitely doing some things right. And it's like very, very important in terms of like how, I guess, your own EV or whatever you want to call it, to consider, like, yeah, basically why did they do what they did? Like, even if you call it a good play or not, rather than just be like, oh, it's like a bad play, like, and that's like really common, even at like relatively higher levels. I think that kind of talk or dismissal is pretty common, but I think more valuable is actually thinking about basically what they were thinking, and in some cases you can even learn, and they're just simply right. Like, they were thinking, they had like a good train of thought, and they did something good that you maybe didn't consider before this moment. But even if they're wrong, it's just still it's kind of like you were saying, it's like it's good to, or important to I guess to have empathy or something, and then you can figure out what they're thinking in future situations.
So a conversation that brings up for me is player profiling and sizing up players on a very small number of data points. We get this from time to time with newcomers to Triton, but you see this a lot more in, WSOP events, for example, especially WSOP main. That's a great example. But any large main event where, first you're trying to decide, does this guy play for a living or not, maybe, or is this guy incredibly, well studied and for all intents and purposes a reg, or is this person, someone who plays poker for fun? And from that point on, I guess the question I have for you is, how do you decide how heavily to weight certain data points that are actual hands played, and how to weight other actions you see, body language, words, eye rolling, whatever, happens from these players where you're 3 orbits in and you're just looking at random 40-year-old guy and, you've heard him say a couple things and you've maybe seen one showdown that's relatively normal. What are you working with to try and size them up?
These days, to be honest, I don't really play too many particularly diverse fields. Like, I've played an ep18 main here and there, but a lot of, I guess, my volume has been like Tritons or the bigger stuff at EPTs. But generally, I still remember, like, or if, let's say I were to go tomorrow to go play like some small local main event or random side event, I think most players, or a lot of players, have this in common, where they can you can really make a profile pretty quickly. And I think, like, obviously there's the saying, like, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover or whatever. But a lot of the time, I think, stereotypes exist for a reason. And I think most of the time, initial impression is pretty accurate. Like, obviously sometimes that can change. You have an idea and then suddenly someone surprises you and stuff like that. But I think most of the time, initial impression, like, is someone, for example, playing like for a living, are they likely to be like a nerd? Are they likely to be scared? Are they likely to like have a big ego, whatever, stuff like this? I think it's like, I would say, pretty accurate most of the time. I think the tough one, which to be fair isn't that common, is sometimes you have, especially people who are like quite a bit older, but they're still a pro or very good player at least. I think this can be the one that takes a little while, especially if they're purposely trying to trick you or something. But this is just not that common. And even then you kind of get an idea that, like, you're not sure if they're pro, but you can see that they're clearly thinking or something like that, just by the way they play, their mannerisms, like how they handle chips, all this sort of stuff. So I think in theory, like, there are like some, for example, like older people who are like purposely like acting like a non-pro, I guess, for lack of better words.
Why do you think there's not as much of that as there could be? I mean, if I was 55 years old and, had the right accent, I mean, my accent is probably the right one, but why are they not tricking us more, or why are they not trying to?
Well, I think firstly, there just aren't that many like 55-year-old crushing pros or whatever.
Fair, maybe not crushing, but like guys who, are beating a $200 tournament online.
So I think it depends on like what kind of games you're playing in. I think there probably are some of them out there, but I think a lot of them, maybe for example, are very competitive people, and they don't necessarily want to have this extra element of the game where they're pretending to be a donk, for lack of a better word, and they're competitive too. They just want to compete in the same way that like anyone else does. And yeah, I mean, as I said, I think it takes some potentially, like, it's almost like it's an extra layer to the game where you have to like, now you have to thinking like, okay, these people think I'm a donk, and what does that mean? Like, how am I going to play as, it's like something that you can do once in a while as a final challenge.
I love it. I used to dress up for the WSOP main. I never have to decide whether or not I'm going to share this in the podcast, but I would have these costumes. I had a fake tattoo with pocket aces on my shoulder, and I'm wearing a sleeveless with like a boxing glove hanging down.
I mean, also, it might happen more than we think as well. In 20s, it's kind of hard to be under the radar for too long. In cash, there could just be like people. I mean, I don't know. At some point, it's just like, you can't really hide that you're like winning, kind of, especially if you go to the same game all the time.
Yeah. Like,
it's very hard for like the player pool to think you are, losing when you're winning, basically. Like over, 1 session, 2 sessions, sure. But like if you're going there for a year, like even if you act, people figure it out. And like, I think you really have to like live a whole double life and really play the story.
You don't have to tell me. I gotta give you the voice that I would use. It was so over the top that I felt like nobody would call me out, because it just like, who would do such a ridiculous thing? I had Martin Kozlov at my table. This is like 5 or 6 years ago, day one of the main, and I'm in this ridiculous dress. I would do something ridiculous almost every year for day one. Day two, it doesn't work because they put your seat count, but I would bring a disguise in my backpack if I got moved, and then I would change before I walked over to my table. So I've got Martin Kozlov opening EP, I flap button. I think I had king queen suited because I actually remember my hand made no sense, but I just went with it. Flop is like ace high wheel, heads up, infinite big blinds deep, and he c-bets. And I was just like, all right, no pro would ever do this. I can really just like take all of the, questions out of it. I tank for a minute versus like a normal c-bet. And then I take all of my small chips, which is like 2,500 or something versus his 300. And I go, lose. And I just windmill all these chips into the pot.
Dude, this is like that situation where you have to like do the same thing again, kind of.
So yeah. And I just remember him staring at me for like 5 seconds, just being like, how do I have the biggest fucking clown in the whole tournament at my table? And yeah, I did the voice the whole day, and I would like announce my actions while I did them. Check. That's 700. Just had to keep the voice up. Something that interests me that I think especially people outside the poker life are pretty interested in, and maybe only see the glamorous side of, is our relationship to freedom. I'd be curious if you can talk a little bit about, maybe, of course, some of the freedom that poker brought you in the first place, and if you ever felt, this might be a little dramatic, but suffocated by the freedom, or if the freedom was ever inhibiting your growth or health and happiness in some ways. And then, you and I both have a family. If that freedom has again helped, I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but your relationship to freedom over the course of your life in poker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly just like super, super grateful for what I've been able to, I guess, do through or with poker. Pretty much from, I did like 1 year of uni and then I stopped university. And then I pretty much just traveled the world nonstop for like 10 years or something like that, maybe a little bit less. And at that point, no, I never really had any of the downsides to it. I would say it was purely just a blessing, and like, yeah, I could just literally go anywhere, anytime, have almost no commitments. I mean, sometimes there was times for like, let's say Supernova League where like I had to play when I didn't want to or something, but for the most part, I could more or less like play when I wanted to, not play when I didn't want to, travel to wherever I wanted to. And I was having, I kind of forgot or stopped recently, but like I was making a list of places I've been to, and it's like very, very surreal to look at that list and give myself a moment to like remember some of the experiences I've had, when I've been traveling or who I've been hanging out with and stuff like that. So it's really surreal to have been able to just travel so much at a young age. And I think I learned a lot, and especially coming from New Zealand, like a very small country where growing up, like I basically never went overseas. I went a couple times, but like compared to the level that I have done, after university and starting to play poker, I think I learned a lot about like, I guess, the world or myself or everything, I guess. It's overwhelming really. And I mean, I know I'm rambling, but I think the freedom has over time changed a little bit, like especially with a family. I still obviously have quite a lot of flexibility and stuff, but it's not like I can just go anywhere anytime really. I remember one time I missed so I was in London, or maybe I was in Brighton, or similar, either London or Brighton, and I had a flight from one of the airports, but I didn't realize, or I forgot, or I just didn't look it up. And whatever. One of the airports is much further than the other one, like depending where you are, obviously. And basically, whatever. I missed my flight. I think I was supposed to go to Australia for like a PPT Melbourne or something like this. Mm-hmm. So I missed the flight from London. And then I just like, I got my laptop out, I opened Google Maps, and I'm just like, of the world, where should I go to? So I went to Iceland for like a week, and by myself, and I could That's just awesome. Do stuff like that. Yeah, it was great.
That's very cool. Yeah. Where are some of the best places you've gone?
Oh, so many, and I think in the beginning, some of the places I went to that I didn't necessarily like or have a great experience, I went back later and liked a lot more. I think there's different reasons for that, like, changing as a person. I think in some cases, affordability, like you just, going to certain places on like a relatively low budget might not be as fun. I'm not saying that has to be the case, at least for me, that could have been one of the reasons. I mean, I've really loved, let's say, I don't know, like Japan is amazing. A lot of Canada, like Vancouver, Toronto, I mean, Montreal, I don't know, everywhere. Like there's not too many places that I didn't like, I guess. And I think I always have trouble when someone asks me like, oh, what's your favorite place? Like I don't really have a great answer. It's like, I mean, maybe Japan comes to the top of my head, but like every place is, I mean, it's a bit cheesy, but like every place is like special for its own reasons. And then some of the places, it's like, it's really nice or beautiful or whatever. But then I also like had maybe like poker milestones or great memories hanging out with like friends and stuff like this. Yeah.
So on the topic of hanging out with friends and also, coming from a small island, how did you talked a little bit at the beginning about your friend who was crushing 1-2, your friend who you knew through Pokemon, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you find your tribe when you were playing online a lot? Who were some of those guys, if you don't mind sharing? Yeah, and then who do you study with? Maybe not study with now, but who do you talk strategy? Who's been kind of in your inner circle of the past 5 or so years?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I was pretty active on like 2+2 and stuff. And I, at some point, I had a few milestones which really encouraged me to just like talk more and be like more social with just the poker community in general. And I think I became or am or whatever, like friendly with quite a lot of people, I would say. In the very beginning, some of, I think like I kind of most involved or closest with, or whatever you want to call it, with like some of the German speaking community, which I think at some point this was like a somewhat like well-known fact or whatever, whereas like now it's like, I think that's probably news to a lot of people.
It's funny, I did not, yeah.
Yeah, just like, I don't know, people like Chris Frank, super good friend of mine. People like Jens Lackmeyer, Olushemion. Like there's many. Like I'm not like, including some people, not others. Martin Finger. This list goes on and on. Like, and a lot of these people, I've been on road trips with. I traveled the world with them. I lived with them. It's like, I don't know.
Martin Finger's Piggy Bank, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he's
exactly.
a character. I would love to chat with him. I've never.
Mileage, Turo, all these people. Like, there's so, this is hundreds. Camel, Camel, you will know as well, right? From
yeah, the Camel. Wait, you mean the English guy, right?
No, not the English guy, the German Camel. But you must have overlapped a little bit, I think. Kilian Kramer, sorry.
Not ringing a bell for me, but I have a bad memory.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for quite a while, like I spent quite a few months, maybe even pushing a year in Vienna, like in different combinations of these people. Obviously, they're also on the road and traveling and stuff like that. So I think for quite a while, I was I think most involved with them maybe, but I don't know. I had a very and still do really have like a very diverse in terms of like countries and stuff, people I'm like friendly with, and these days, I don't know, like my improvement or learning is really, I don't have like one, for example, particular study partner or group that I'm like habitually working with, but it's just, I don't know, talking to various different friends, or even sometimes it's not necessarily like close friends. It might just be like at a Triton and have a random casual chat with like someone like you or whatever, like, and you're just always learning from these little chats. And I think most people these days are pretty. I'm not saying everybody is giving away all the secrets necessarily, but like I think most people are pretty open to discussing and benefiting from talking to each other mutually, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I maybe couldn't have asked a lot of the questions I'd want to on this podcast if it was 4 years ago. All these cards upstream have really made a pretty big difference, where it's tough to hide a lot of the most important stuff. I think, your reads on specific players is maybe something that's not worthy of discussing openly, but most of the strategy, it's kind of out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think like, obviously stuff that the fact that so much of the volume is on streams or hold cards where you have the app is one thing. And also just in general, I think, like people think pretty similarly about most things. Obviously there's some differences in opinion or differences in different solvers or something, but like for the most part, a lot of the common concepts and themes and stuff are more or less consistent. And I think also a lot of the, let's say the Triton level, I think a lot of people are in a pretty good spot where like they've kind of achieved what they want or need to or whatever. And I think it's less competitive in that aspect. Obviously the case by case is different, but I think most people are pretty open, whether to each other or to like members of the public or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it goes back to that "why are you here" question. And even the best players in the world, I would argue, are not trying to maximize their EV. If they were, they'd be doing some pretty shitty things to each other that they're just not doing. Yeah.
No, I think it's a pretty good environment. And a lot of people are definitely, prioritizing like stuff like health, enjoyment, social, whatever, rather than like, obviously it's very competitive and some people want to do their best and stuff, but like, you have to find a balance of all those other things I said and more. And then just like, what's your ROI in this tournament, or what's your EV this year or whatever.
Yeah. I'm smiling because an image came to my mind, which I was just thinking like, Triton really is like, the elite live league anyway. Certainly you can make the case, and I would agree that some of the online tournaments are tougher, but that, the majority of the best players in the world, I think it's fair to say, play Tritons to some at some volume. And not to say everyone who's playing them is a best player in the world. But anyway, at the same time, there is this kind of convivial atmosphere, and like I said, people are not doing everything they can for every last shred of a percentage of ROI, which makes it feel kind of like the seniors tour in like golf, where it's like, hey, they're really elite, they're great players, but also like they're having a good time, they're nice with each other, and they're like they're a little bit past the point where they want to grind out every edge. It's an interesting dichotomy to think that many of the best players in the world aren't exactly competing the hardest. I don't know. Maybe that's not a fair statement.
I mean, yeah, it's just like in some ways, right? It's like it's like there's things that they have to consider, like their own enjoyment, the enjoyment of like other players, whether that's other professionals or non-professionals or whatever. Yeah, I mean, as we said, like health. This, sometimes people, like, let's say, for example, there's like cash games people could play, but then like you have really bad hours, like bad sleeping schedule. It's like at one point, like let's say you're just a random example. Let's say you're 40 with kids and you have a lot of money. Like, do you want to do that? Like maybe not. Why are you doing it? I mean, it's the same like for anyone, regardless of your current status and stuff. It's really important to always ask yourself and be honest with yourself and take the time to think about like why you're doing what you're doing, what your goals are, what you want to achieve. This can obviously change over time, and that's totally fine. You can decide one day that like, I want to do this because XYZ, and then like in a few months later, you can reflect on it and realize maybe it changed, or maybe you were wrong in the first place, or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Taking a holistic approach is definitely, that's the no-brainer to me. I don't think everyone agrees with it, but when I think about, I'm just theorizing here. When I think about sports and some of the most successful people, Michael Jordan is an easy person to pick. I don't think he's spending much of his career caring about being liked or enjoyment as much as he's thinking, I just want to win. How do I win? How do I win? How do I play better? And I wonder if some of that, I mean, certainly poker has a lower ceiling. None of us are making $380 million in our career. I mean, I don't think. There's a financial ceiling that's much lower than most of the major sports, but even sports that I think there's some sports that pay relatively similar, where people are still completely all in on their sport in a way that most poker players don't really maintain for very long. And again, this is a complete guess. I'm just thinking about it now, but maybe it's because none of us really get obsessed with the idea of being a poker player at 5 years old and then spend the next, 10 years fantasizing about it. Like most of us kind of come at it as a teenager when you've kind of had some emotional growth and seen the world a little bit more three-dimensionally before getting kind of pigeonholed into one dream. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not too sure about the reason it's so different with like other sport, but just in general, when it comes to, let's say, poker specifically, it's pretty much just a case of like, I guess, diminishing returns, right? It's like when you start, like there's all these things that you can potentially or hope to gain or achieve or whatever, where like, for example, like the financial benefits or getting to travel or getting to socialize in certain environments that are like quite different to what you otherwise would. And over time, it's like these are still great benefits, but they obviously get less relative to the beginning when you've had no experience of this, and other things, just become more important. I mean, also just in general, it's kind of a common thing where like as you get older, maybe you care about your health more. You start thinking about longevity. You start thinking about mortality, blah blah blah. And for example, like you have your family's getting older, or you have new kids and stuff, which you need to consider. And you just want to work on like stuff like your mental health. And there's so many different, I guess, parts of, I mean, again, cheesy, but like so many different things in life to it's like you have a finite amount of time and energy, right? And then you need to like allocate that accordingly. And yeah, it's just like, in order to be like, let's say my goal was to be like the best poker player in the world. I mean, like it doesn't, for me personally, that doesn't really look like a life that works. It's just like spending basically infinite time on poker, very, very little, if any, time on almost anything else. I mean, part of being a good poker player, especially live, there is some level of fitness or health that is required. So I'm not saying like you literally only eat garbage and never go for a walk or something, but you get the point. Like it's just there's a lot of sacrifice that has to be made, and that a lot of people did make.
Yeah, I think also. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Structured Tournament Strategy by Nick Petrangelo and Daniel Dvoress. This course covers pre-bubble, bubble, in the money, and the final table broken down like never before. We also cover post-flop ICM, blind versus blind, and much more. Buy now for $9.99 only at GTOLAB.com.
Yeah, I think also you started by talking about diminishing returns, and I think about diminishing returns paired with time horizon, paired with variance as kind of the three factors that keep people from being completely obsessive about, let's say, becoming the best poker player in the world. One is the chances are you won't have the best results in the world. And that's a little bit strange because that doesn't really happen over, a long time horizon with these other sports. You might not win the most championships in a team sport, but still your individual statistics will probably bear out that you were the best, or if not, maybe one of the top three. And then the time horizon, like, I don't know, if somebody's goal is to lose weight, that's going to show up in a week, and it's really going to show up in a month, and over 6 months, they'll see the results. But if you are picking something up in poker, let's say you study a very complicated node that doesn't come up all that often, but you're now the best in the world at that, and you're ready when that comes up. If you're a live poker player, you might not see it for 2 years. This spot just might not come up. And then all that work, you don't get that positive feedback that keeps you wanting to work hard. That's what I find in myself anyway, as I say, like, racket sports, Dan Smith and I talked about this recently. You see the returns of your hard work really quickly. I don't even mean practicing. I just mean hustling to a ball to get in a slightly better position or whatnot, is going to pay off immediately. Whereas in poker, I don't know, trying to pay really close attention to maybe David doesn't notice that he has a little bias to B55 instead of B50 when he has the good hand, and I have to watch 80 examples to see if there's any statistical significance to this. And then by the time there is something identified, David's poker might have changed. And it's like, that's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I think the feedback can be quite slow. There's a lot of variance, as you said. And I mean, everyone is different. Like, I know there's probably some people who are, like, I guess in this context, more competitive, and they care more about this, for example, being the best and stuff. But yeah, I think there's all these reasons. Just, it makes it pretty hard. And I don't know, it's like, what do you, like, you want to be the best player, like, what, like, it's very often not going to be correlated with your results, especially in tournaments. I think in like, for example, online cash, I think it's not, like, there's obviously always going to be some opinions and stuff like that, but it's like at one given point, you can kind of have a universal opinion that someone is the best, or the best at 6-max cash, or the best at heads-up cash, or something like that. Like, you can, you play like a certain amount of hands, and it's pretty hard to, I mean, it's pretty easy, rather.
Or defined hierarchies.
Yeah, but like in live tourneys, there's always just going to be opinion. I mean, it's like if you ask 100 people, like, obviously some of the people who are in the top 3 or 5 or whatever are going to be pretty consistent and pretty often named. But even then, you have, like, very good players who disagree with that. They'll be like, this player's actually not that good, blah, 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 and it's just like,
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm always considering for my own strategic reasons is how much does this player care about being thought of as a great player? And that's not to do with their effort level, but it's to do with, I think we all have played hands where we know public opinion generally is going to be in one camp. If we, like, an easy example would be this: giving up on a pure bluff. When you give up on a pure bluff, especially if it was against a reg, pretty much anyone who sees the hand is going to say, like, either this guy has no sack or this guy was ignorant of the situation. But either way, it doesn't reflect well on you. But maybe you have really good data for whatever reason, or a really strong feeling that this player is over bluff catching the river. And, maybe that's because they're buried on the trip or whatever reason, or that they, are going to love over calling you. And maybe only 1 or 2 of your boys who you tell this hand to is going to agree with you. Maybe nobody agrees with you. But if you just make the bluff in general, you won't look bad to the community. Pretty much no one's going to critique you for making a play that a solver would do in a standard situation. And I feel like that's just one example, but examples kind of abound when I ask myself, is this a player who wants people to think he's good, or is this a player who's going to trust what they think is right? Obviously, vast majority of the time, maybe 99% of the time, those are going to harmonize.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with some of what you said. Like, it's definitely important to, basically, I guess, get into your opponent's head. Like, what are they thinking? What do they care about? I think, personally, I do find, like, when talking to, I guess, people I consider good players, this isn't too much of an issue, where it's like, if you, for example, if you see someone, like, giving up on a pure bluff, there's a few different things that can happen. It's like, one, generally people won't be too quick to judge on, like, one hand, because obviously they could have just made a mistake. 2, a lot of the time they'll give, especially for respected players, they'll give the benefit of the doubt that there was, like, a reason. It might not be correct in this case, but they were, for example, they just, this person had a read, they didn't want to bluff for this reason against this player or in this situation or whatever. And Yeah, I mean, there can be like a trend. It can be like, oh, this player doesn't bluff enough in general, and people obviously can notice that over time. But usually, specific hand or even couple hands, it's not too much of an issue. But overall, like, I mean, the takeaway, I guess, is, yeah, I mean, for sure, I think it's important to, continuing on that theme of like thinking like, yeah, what matters to people? Why are they playing? What are they thinking, basically, as much as you can. And that's the same applies for online. And I think like people who are experienced, you know, you can, or at least in my opinion, you can very often see or get an idea like, yeah, what were people thinking? What were people thinking when they played a hand? I mean, in some cases, what they were thinking is simply like, oh, solver does this or should do this, and or whatever, this is the correct play or whatever. But a lot of the time you can, the logic of what someone is doing. I mean, we're still playing against humans, you know.
Well, I think I probably should have contextualized it a bit. When I think about this, the kind of example I gave, a lot of times I'm thinking about a player who is worried about staying in action, making sure they're maybe new to the high stakes scene, or they're in a peer group that thinks in a very solver oriented fashion and maybe are less of believers, especially in reg versus reg situations of deviations. And that's where I think like, hey, all things being equal, if I'm like, you know, only 51% sure of my weird check as the better play, maybe I should just do the thing I won't get criticized for.
Yeah, no, I get your point. I think you can definitely see, especially I guess I think established people tend to, like let's say at high stakes, tend to have a bit more, like on average, not everyone's the same, but like people tend to give themselves a bit more leeway to like go off their guard or do what they think is right and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely like an aspect, especially for up and coming or newcomers or whatever, where it's in many ways it's a great environment and friendly and enjoyable, but there's also a lot of, you know, judging like behind the scenes, or look at this hand, look at what this person did, blah blah.
And we've all gotten sent plenty of hands.
Yeah, so I mean, it's I can imagine for some people how it can be, like especially if they're sort of still trying, you know, quote unquote, trying to prove themselves or stay in action, as you say. And I think all of these things, I think most of the good players are taking this into consideration.
This is kind of tangential to shit talk, but I think it's fun. For the established players, I think there can be the opposite kind of phenomena. In poker, it's very difficult, aside from just sun running, to assert yourself and separate yourself from the pack. Just like, I don't know, those guys are regs. What's their ROI? Within a point or two of each other. That's kind of like a lot of people's assessment. And so the phenomena I'm referring to is going off chart too much. Going, you know, trying to do the thing that no one else would do a little bit more often. And along with that, I would say studying esoterica, that you're going to be ahead of the curve on something that has almost no returns, but it'll stick out and people will be like, wow, that's a really good player. And he just made a bet size in a spot I've never seen, or he made a lead in a spot that I never knew there were leads. And it kind of is like, in my view, it's like akin to virtue signaling, and the kind of negative connotation of like, you're doing something just so you stick out. Yeah, I mean, I do have a couple of examples that come to mind of who you might be referring to, or things that you might be referring to. I mean, I'm in some cases referring to myself for going out of the box. I'm all over the place. I mean, I think it's whatever. Like, I think like most good, smart players realize that you need to be efficient with the time you spend in improving or working on your game and stuff like that. So that's to say that like there's some really interesting spots, but like they never happen, and therefore they have like little to no impact on your win rate, and therefore you shouldn't really study them, basically, like in terms of efficiency. But you know, most of us, you know, really enjoy the game, and I think in some cases you just do it out of interest. It's like, oh, how does like a trips board play, like, you know? And I think if you just happen to know the answer from, or like a guess of the answer from, you know, just curiosity or whatever, as long as you're being conscious and mindful about the time that you're spending improving, like I think it's fine, like within reason, to now and then look up a hand that like, you know, it's not going to matter for your win rate, but you're just curious because it's interesting or whatever, or even not even look it up, like you just think about it yourself. Like a lot of players at sort of a higher level are capable of basically analyzing it, and maybe they don't get the exact answer the solver would, obviously, but they can get like a pretty good solution, whether that's what they think is the
I guess like, GTO or whatever. Or
that's me, but then I never check on it and I just assume I was right and I'm wrong like 80% of the time.
Yeah, but it's like, let's say for you, like, you've thought about the spot because it's interesting or it's fun or whatever, or it's like a nice mental challenge, like a puzzle. And then the spot actually comes up and you're like, oh, I've thought about what I would do in this spot. And it's like, I don't think there's any virtue. I mean, you would know for yourself, for your specific example, like what you're doing, but I don't really think in too many, I mean, obviously there could be some subconscious level to this, but I think for most people, it's not really about showing off or whatever. It's just genuine curiosity. But I could totally be wrong.
That's fair. You're nicer than me.
Yeah, it depends on the situation, of course. I mean, I'm sure there is some of that. And the thing is, like, there are definitely people who, basically aren't that efficient with their studying, either because they just don't know better or maybe they do want to like, I guess, again, show off.
Along the lines of what does poker mean to you? Let me spill out a little riff on one of the things that it's meant to me, and kind of what I enjoy about this podcast is poker has been like a vehicle for me to not only learn about myself, but learn about the world. We talked a little bit about it, but also primarily learn about the world from an adversarial perspective. So that's not entirely helpful and sometimes can kind of set you up poorly. It hasn't taught me as much about cooperation, which I think is vital. But when I think about my gratitude towards the game, a lot of it is that it's been this vessel for my education emotionally. You can talk about dealing with downswings. You can talk about the flip side. I think I've maybe had even more trouble dealing with upswings. But curious to hear some of your thoughts if you want to take my riff and expand, or talk about how poker has helped you just as a person in growth.
Yeah, so I think in general, the experiences of poker have been very helpful. I think thinking in probability in general as an overall concept is nice and interesting. Sometimes kind of scary. I mean, it's like, as poker players, you kind of understand, variance, and it's like if you play out one hand like thousands of times or tens of thousands of times or whatever, like it can have a completely different result. And a lot of the time, let's say in one hand, your pot share is like whatever, 50% of the pot or something. And it's like most of the time you either get 100 or 0, right? And it can help a bit in terms of like, I don't know, understanding like what is EV and what is the actual result, and stuff like not being results orientated is obviously a pretty common one. And I don't know, it is kind of weird though to think in I don't know, in life, and there's just so many things that happen which could have gone like a different way. And it's even as poker players, I think it's like very hard to not be results orientated. It's like, okay, let's say for example, like it's only a model, but like, let's say an election is supposed to go one way 63% of the time, and then this time it went either way, and it's just like the world is going to be completely different as a result of this potentially chance, depending on how you look at it, right? And I mean, depending how far you take it, it's just like, it's like the way your life plays out, it's like one hand or something, it's just like so many, I don't know, I'm being on a bit of a maybe tangent or something, but I don't know. I think, I guess like understanding, I think understanding is even too strong of a word. Like I don't even want to say I understand probability necessarily, but I guess like appreciating, like I don't know, probability outcomes.
You think in probabilistic terms.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of the world doesn't.
Yeah, I think this stuff has been, I don't know, interesting. At least I'm not sure about use. I mean, for sure, it's useful in some ways. But
I feel like there's kind of this instant kinship with people who like that's the glue. If I were to point to one thing that makes poker players kind of like immediately have this connection, is not directly the game and not even directly loving games. I mean, not every poker player actually loves games, but it's thinking in probabilistic terms, which maybe not every poker player does, but those that do, they tend to kind of coalesce around that. It's this understanding that probably, religious people, when, you find someone of the same sect as yourself, you just have this immediate understanding. But kind of the dark side to that, or the unfortunate flip, is I wonder, for me, it creates a barrier with people who do not think probabilistically, and this kind of impediment to connection. If it's a tough thing to sell people on in an instant, if they're an adult and they've been in this world for a while and they don't think probabilistically, to me, it almost feels like, vicious isn't the word, but like there's a friction that is like akin to a zealous atheist and a very dogmatic religious person, where it's like, you can find some common ground, but we're really skating around a pretty big issue that makes things difficult for these people.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, firstly, I think one thing that's like really, I guess, amazing about poker is like how much people like, obviously there's exceptions, but for the most part, like if you get any relatively experienced poker player, like there's so much you have in common. I mean, mostly just from, I guess, the way of thinking, or maybe like, especially let's say as like online pros or something, there's just like so much you've shared, whether that's like you've literally played in hands or tournaments or games or whatever together, but also just gone through like very similar, for example, stuff in career, or
just remembering poker stars' names.
Yeah, or like downswing or whatever, like just all these experiences which are like very similar. And I mean, to be fair, I don't think it's poker exclusive. Like I can imagine that if you look at like something like skydivers, it's like the same thing, where like if you have some skydivers from New Zealand, but Australia and Canada and Germany, and like even though they're like from completely different backgrounds or even different ages or whatever, like if they just like met in a room, they could like get along, and they share so much in common. So again, it's not necessarily poker specific, but it's like in any world really. Yeah, again, like skydivers or like, I don't know, fishermen at sea or whatever. And what was your question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about kind of finding your tribe. I guess I was talking about what comes with that is when you find your tribe, in-group, out-group stuff kind of happens. And I think about this thinking probabilistically, like I don't want to keep any barriers up between people, but sometimes I find it really difficult to have a lot of the conversations that interest me with people who do not think probabilistically.
Yeah, so I generally like, I mean, I'm not saying it's correct, but like I lean towards being like not too confrontational, and part of that is, I mean, sometimes it depends, it varies from person to person, but yeah, I think in general it's just more pleasant and easy, and that doesn't mean better to like not try to like convince people to change their worldview on something. As you say, it's like they live their life.
But how do you connect with them is what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people want to hear what you have to say, and it seems like they're vibing, and they kind of, not necessarily they're going to change their view or whatever, but they're like at least open to what you're saying, and then obviously I'm happy to like share in that case. But yeah, of course, like I think sometimes it can be quite hard to maybe relate to people who think so differently, or I mean, that being said, like I'm personally like relatively, for a poker player, I think I wouldn't say spiritual, but like I'm open. You have like a spectrum of like 100% science, the world in general, blah blah blah,
sure.
and like I guess the opposite of that. And I think a lot of people are very logical and like, okay, the chance of this is happening is this, and so on. So like almost the top end of the spectrum. I don't think I'm quite there. So I think it can be a little bit easier for the specific thing to maybe relate to people who are like, for example, like the idea that I think, things happen for a reason, or that like there's greater meaning to this and that. Like I'm definitely not on the other end of the spectrum either, but like I'm a little bit I'm less just like, oh, this happens 1 in 10 times, and it happened that it was 10% this time, so that's what, like I don't know. So I think I feel like I can kind of almost going back to what I was saying before. Like I think I kind of like get why people think and I guess the way they do, not with everything. I don't mean it in like I'm very confident about that or whatever, but I think in a lot of situations, it's just like I get why people are like superstitious or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm not, pure rationalist. I think there's some unexplained. I assume you still play some online poker, because I've seen you in the GG Millions final tables before. But question is, what do you see as the future of online poker?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's like quite incredible that like the stakes are just like so big, and there's so much action these days compared to like 6-7 years ago. I think it's pretty hard to predict the future. I can obviously see the argument that stuff like, AI is getting more of a problem and games are maybe getting tougher and stuff like that. But I mean, I think there's so many different parts of the formula or equation or whatever, where it's like, how much is poker growing in general? How much is regulation? I think this is something that like most pros probably don't really consider enough. It's like, it's so much more. I think it's just like, is there a bit more RTA going on compared to like how much regulation and how much governments like taxing certain countries and which countries will be allowed to play in global markets and stuff like this. I think that's like probably a bigger thing. But to answer your question, yeah, I don't really know. I would say I'm relatively more on the optimistic side compared to like average or something. But I mean, I'm kind of biased. I mean, everybody is biased from their own experiences. Like people who played online and like, for example, didn't win, and it could be because of variance. It could be because their skills aren't as good as they think or whatever. It's like so many different reasons. You don't know, right? But same thing with winners. It's like people who win, they might be like, or they likely are overestimating the edge or underestimating the dangers or the risks and stuff like that. So, or like people who did confirm get cheated or whatever are obviously going to have a more pessimistic view. So I think everybody's biased by their own experiences. And so, yeah, I don't really know. I'm like somewhat optimistic. I think like playing for huge stakes online is like, there's definitely some risks and stuff like that, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But like, let's say, do I think you could, if you want to, play like 1-2 online as a job in 10 years? Probably, I think. I think there's like a natural sort of rebalancing of the ecosystem or whatever you want to call it, where like if you adjust rake, it's like certain amount of good players will probably, or like good but not great players will probably be forced to like stop playing or something. And then also, I think a lot of the time at like stakes, like for example 1-2, I think the best players just naturally tend to move on to something else. It could be higher stakes, obviously. So yeah. I think, I in my opinion, and I know I'm aware I'm like a bit biased for this, because on the flip side is that I know a lot of people who have tried hard and they are smart. I don't think it's a matter of a lack of intelligence or anything like this. Who basically did try and it didn't work out for different reasons. So yeah, but I would like to think that for at least sort of at mid stakes and below, if you want to, you probably, my guess is that it will be possible for 10 years or more maybe.
So your answer there at the end with some friends who were not able to move up despite being very intelligent brings me to a question about the players playing the highest stakes today and how much, it might be a little bit loaded to say they earned it or didn't earn it, but selection pressures. How much does luck variance play a role in the players who you're seeing at a Triton today who are not there simply for fun?
So I think that direct luck is probably overrated. So when I say direct luck, I just mean like how good did somebody run? Like did they hit a big score? Are they running hot in tournaments, stuff like that? I mean, obviously there are some exceptions. I think especially people who take big pieces of themselves or did in the past, I think that could be a bit more important. But like if I think of like all the most successful players or the most respected players, I think like obviously some of them, or maybe even most of them, probably ran at some point like above average or whatever. I think that's not as important as some people might think. I think that in some shape or form, most of these players were pretty likely to get to like a pretty high level eventually. They could have got there slower. Maybe they ran good and got to move up quicker than they would have. But I mean, tournaments is also like a worse example of this, where like there's so much more variance. I think like, let's say high stakes cash, I think there's like, let's say
the tournaments are the ones I'm interested in, because I think the tournaments is like the cash. I think you're going to be hard pressed to find too many people say like somebody's holding down a lobby and didn't earn their way there. That's
they bink their way to the being.
Yeah. But like with tournaments, I guess let me tack on one of the components to this is I don't think that there's anyone who's like shit at poker, kind of pretending to be a pro at Triton or whatnot? Or like, what I mean is that a lot of them maybe binked an opportunity to get really good, and that there's someone else who's really good who is not interested in shot taking because they've kind of had to pay the bills a couple of years in a row, and now they're like, okay, just making 150 a year and staying home is great. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, so I think there's like, so the second part of what I was going to say is that, like, I think indirect luck is something that most people, even the people at the quote unquote top, underestimate maybe, or don't want to admit as much. I think indirect luck is a lot of stuff where it's just like, it's like, okay, who did you meet at a certain point? Even finding poker in the first place. That the first time you played, like, you know, you won some random tournament or sit and go or whatever, instead of busting a roll and never coming back again. Like, all these things, I think, I mean, I don't know, I used to lean really on the side where that, like, you know, not everything, but like basically towards that everything is luck. And then at one point, like, a friend of mine kind of said something along the lines of like, you know, if you take it too far, we're just lucky that we're not dust, you know. And that kind of like, it might sound silly to some people, but that kind of changed my perspective a bit. And it's like, okay, you can't really control the fact that luck is so important, you know, so you do want to also, like, I think it's kind of a common thing that, like, that,
I think you're struggling with determinism.
Yeah. I'll move on a little bit. Basically,
no, I'm fascinated. Continue.
Yeah, no, I think people need to be a bit careful to, like, let's, you know, having external success, and then just, you have to find a balance of like treating too much of it as like the result of your like hard work and your greatness and all this other stuff, compared to like, and you know, basically both indirect and direct luck. And I think there's a lot of stuff, as I said, who did you meet at the right time? There's also other stuff that people, different types of, I don't know if it's like some of it that, you know, sort of you create your own luck. Like, I think for specifically, let's say playing Tritons, I think part of the skill, or maybe, I mean, if you want to call it a skill, like, I think some people, and I'm not saying it's like done intentionally, but it's just like, for example, like, did you socialize in a way that you were able to gain connections to sell your action, for example? It's like, sure, I think that's like more important than like, oh, did you bink a tournament at the right time? I mean, people, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people are selling action and stuff like this, and there's different types of, I guess, like, you know, your social skills or circles, other things. It's like, just, I don't know, when you did take shots, whether that's in poker or outside, or like big investments you made or anything, like, did it work out, did it not work out? You know, there's so many different indirect stuff like this.
I'll throw one out that kind of goes with one of the ones you're saying. Just different cultures and different small ecosystems think about selling action very differently. Some people could probably be in the high stakes and would have been there a while ago, but they grew up, like, the guy they looked up to was just like, I'm never going to be a loser and sell my action. And they're like, wow, I guess only a loser would sell action. And then they've just kind of spent their whole career being like someone who's afraid of getting backed and kind of stifled their career.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's so many things like that. And I mean, also, it's just like, to be fair, like, you know, a lot of the people, let's say, who play Triton are like the most successful, or amongst the most successful poker players ever. But it's like, just because someone's playing these stakes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing as well as it may appear. I mean, this is kind of contradictory, but it's also a bubble where, like, you're sort of looking at, due to different like selection biases, luck, whatever, like some of the, I mean, I don't know if fortunate is the right word, but most successful / fortunate people. And I mean, the flip side to that is that there's like a lot of stuff that you don't see of, like, you know, I guess people who basically didn't make it, and not often not because of their own fault, like whether it's variance or, you know, personal issues or whatever that like led to that. And also, like, the whole point was that there's also plenty of people who are under the radar and crushing, and in many cases making more than like an average Triton player or something like that. You know, there could be like online crushes. Like, there's some, you know, sick online players who just only play online, or like 99% play online, and, you know, they're definitely making more, from my guesses, than a lot of the
This is something I've struggled with a fair amount in working on. You know, I'm working on a book.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I don't know too much about it, but I know.
Got it. I mean, it's just basically about the high stakes world, but the idea is that the stories that people really enjoy are stories that line up with facts, and facts in poker are results. It is a fact that X person has, you know, X number of, you know, dollars in winnings or whatever. And they don't want a messy clutter of like, I don't know, nobody knows who the best player is, and that chart there doesn't represent really anything. And, you know, the fact that, you know, character X had a winning year doesn't mean he played well. And it's just like, that's too chaotic. People want stories that make sense. Like the Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl, and the Eagles came back like rah-rah, and then they build the story around the result, and most people kind of believe it. And poker is just like, you have to be a fucking moron to believe that the result told you the story. Like, it's just, one tournament or 1 year.
It depends who your target audience is, right? Because like the people who understand all this,
I want you to enjoy it. I want people in this world to respect it and enjoy it first and foremost. That's kind of what makes it not as palatable to a lot of others.
I think, relatively serious poker players would enjoy, just like the honest truths and the stuff you don't hear. And in the greater public, like I think it's not as interesting, but they just also wouldn't necessarily understand like some of the all those things you said where like results don't necessarily mean like the person who won the most, whatever, it might not be the best player necessarily, or at least that can change over time and all these other things.
On the topic of online poker, when you do play or when you were playing almost every Sunday, did you have any kind of warm-up routine? Do you have any routines or ways to get ready or keep yourself sharp?
Yeah, it's been pretty tough. Like honestly, so much of the time, if I do play online, I'm like home in New Zealand, and like that, my routine is like wake up in the morning at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., wake up, like turn on the computer and just start like 20 tabling high stake or like, whatever, playing a lot of tournaments. So there's no like yoga, or maybe have a coffee, but even then I maybe try to like wait an hour or something. So no, not really. And it's a bit easier now. The schedule starts a bit later and I'm a bit healthier with lifestyle. But like 10 years ago, that used to be quite tough. Like most of the time, there were many times where like I naturally slept on the later side and woke up on the later side. And then I'm supposed to wake up at like 3 a.m. to play the warm up. And then like, it's 10 p.m. I'm trying to sleep. I can't. 11, 12, by midnight, I just give up, And it's like, I'm not going to sleep 3-4 hours. Back then, late rigging wasn't really a thing, at least not for me, not in my mind. So I'd be like, it's cold. I didn't have aircon at that time. It's like, it was a struggle to play tournaments. So for tournaments, basically just wake up and get straight into it. I mean, I can tell you that there's not too many better ways to wake up than like, just like wake up and play like 10 tables of high stakes, It's like,
pretty exciting.
I mean, there's pros and cons to this. It's like you wake up earlier and you start earlier and it's a bit hard. You have to sleep early. But on the other hand, like by the time the stakes get the highest when they matter the most, and it's like final table, final two tables, I'm like, it's like 2 p.m. here or something like that. And then other people are like 4 a.m., like 5 a.m. in Europe or whatever. So that's nice. And then also after the session is done, I can like do some normal stuff. I can maybe have a dinner. I can go catch up with some friends, especially in the summer. I mean, but basically the answer to your question is like both online and live. Not really. I have like less of a pregame. I know that like I've hung out with friends and I've seen that they have some notes they read. They do a warm up. Maybe they do yoga or meditation or something. And I've never really done that. And I'm not saying that's like a good thing. Like it's probably like I should have done all these things, but like I've just been used to like playing, and my way of waking up is just, or like not literally waking up, but like starting the session is just like get into the action. And then like
I'm envious hearing about, I mean, not the 4 a.m. wake up, but the flip side to that, of course, being awake and being sharp when the high stakes are being played, when you're playing final tables. But the idea that you could decompress, especially from a bad session when you're kind of done by whatever, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., whatever it was, and go outside and do something in nature, or just kind of like you can live a kind of a real day, which is awesome because, even where I was when I was playing online, it was Massachusetts or Montreal. And I mean, it's basically nighttime and you can just kind of do the negative decompressions that most people do at night. I mean, I'm a person who kind of, the fun things that are not bad for me are mostly involving sunlight. That was never really an option when a Sunday was over.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, like sometimes it's like, your head is kind of buzzing and it's nice to like go for a walk or go for a swim. I think that's like that shock of the water is pretty hard to compete with. And I mean, I just like, I remember in Europe playing Scoop or something, and it's like, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., regardless of how the session went, but especially if it went badly, as you say. And then it's like, in a couple cases, I remember like I didn't even have like decent curtains, and then the sun is like blaring on my face, and I'm like, fuck, like I need to like sleep. I feel like shit, like horrible. Yeah, I think New Zealand is a pretty good. I mean, I didn't spend too many years or Sundays or whatever playing here actually, but I think it's like a pretty good schedule. I mean, to be fair, like I do think some parts of like North America, South America, at least these days, it's pretty nice. Like you start more like at 7 or 8, and that's a bit more reasonable. And here also you have the option if you want to. It's a bit harder now with bonus chips and stuff, but like you could also late rig. Like it's a pretty common thing.
Bonus chips? I don't even know about that. How does that work?
On GG decided to, maybe a year ago now, basically like late rigging, or specifically max late rigging, became like so much of a strategy, and people basically, if you start from the beginning of the tournament, you get 10% more chips on level. If you re-enter at level 2, you get 5% more chips, and then 4% and 3% and 2%, or something like that. You basically get like 10% to start, and then the next level you get 5%, then 4, 3, 2, 1, I think. And so that basically sort of nerfs. Or like,
yeah. That's great. I hate max late. I hate that it's a smart strategy in many situations. That's nice that they nerfed it.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's nice. They've done some innovative stuff that, like, being ahead of the curve in some ways for sure.
This is David Yan in the hot seat. I've got 5 shitty questions for you to answer.
All right,
that hopefully make you squirm a little bit.
I'm excited. I love shitty questions. People know.
Tell us one of the worst hand histories you played in the past couple of years.
Past couple of years.
Yeah, hand that you just hated what you did. Take your time.
Last couple of years. Oh man, I'm sure there are some, but let me think. Like nothing super like comes to mind in terms of being like crazy out of line necessarily. I mean, there's quite a few like plays I regretted, but I don't think they're necessarily that interesting.
Anything where you felt like 2 pips off of the final table or something?
I mean, probably, but I don't know if I've like. I mean, there was like a hand where I like raise called Ace King on like 8-7-6 maybe. I think 8-7-6. So it was like 20 left in Monaco, 25K WPT Grand Slam or something like that. And then I opened button with Ace King off, and then Thomas Boyven calls big blind with on I think 8-7-6 with a flush draw. He leads small, and I raise get it in for like almost 20 bigs, or maybe 20 bigs, let's say, with Ace King with no backdoor flush draw. Maybe something like 10% of the field left.
Was it punishment? Did he have something to have you drawing real thin?
Yeah, I mean he had 9-8, so I was drawing pretty bad.
Okay, wasn't a straight.
No, not. I wasn't dead, but yeah, I had pretty bad equity.
Didn't feel good. Okay. We move on to what's something that a younger version of you would have thought you'd be better at by now that you're just not.
What, sorry? What version?
What's something that you thought you'd be better at by now that you're not?
That I thought I would be better at.
A younger version of you is like, really, David? Dude.
I don't know. I was never too bullish on my skills, Like, maybe I should be better at Pokemon now, for the card game. I mean, I think like there's some stuff that's been on my to-do list for a long time, like reading, for example, where like, I know it's good for me. Everybody recommends it. Like I wanted to do it, but I just haven't picked up the habit for whatever reason. So like, I think, that's like, there's some habits like that I think I definitely could work on. And I mean, as a kid, I was like really into reading, like, maybe one of the most in my class or something. And then at some point, like games and stuff like that, like took over, I guess.
Yep. Gotcha. Which high stakes regular would be the most embarrassing person to lose an arm wrestling match to, with the caveat that you think they are a favorite? They're at least 51% if you had to set the odds right now. So take your time. That's a tough one. You would least personally embarrassing. This is who you don't want to lose to for whatever reasons that means. You're going to have
a favorite.
The arm wrestling match is going to happen on break of the next Triton main, and everyone's going to gather around and be cheering for whoever they want. This is who you don't want to lose to this guy. But I don't want it to just be like the weakest person, whoever that is. It's meant to be someone that you think you're at least a coin flip with, not,
I don't really have these sort of things where like I don't want to lose to that guy, And
yeah.
Out of the people who are stronger, it's like I can't really think of like I don't know. I can't really think of any good answers. Hecklin, but it's
Hecklin.
I'm like totally fine losing to him, but like it would be just kind of be funny, like maybe he would needle me or
Hecklin's
something.
who I most want to lose to.
Yeah, it's not a good. I don't know.
It's a tough question. I can see how they're all equal. This is kind of a tough one. I don't know. I didn't really ask myself these questions, so we'll see if you have anything. What's the worst thing you've seen at the poker table?
The worst thing I've seen. I mean, I I have kind of a pet peeve for when people like eat like chips, like hot chips, and then just like play poker, like without wiping their hands. Like I'm probably a little bit too much of a clean guy in some ways, but like that
Getting Cheetos on the cards.
Yeah, like just eating like stuff like that. I mean, other than that, I guess just being rude to dealers and stuff like that. But it doesn't really. I don't see it at Triton much at all, if ever. But like, I've seen some pretty bad like ones. I guess.
You got to hit us with a low light. That's what this is for. You can bleep out if there's any bleeps necessary, but
not like super crazy, but just like very out of line. Not necessarily like it wasn't like I'm gonna like kill you or something, but it was just like, what are you doing? Like, but like quite aggressive, and in spots it's not even their fault, or like just like I don't want to get in too specific, but basically they were like, when when's your shift over? Because you're my unlucky dealer, like that kind of stupid stuff.
Oh, okay. I thought it was gonna get much more violent.
No, it wasn't. I haven't seen anything. I mean, I might be forgetting. Like, there might be something that's like that hasn't come to mind too much, but generally I have not had any like really bad experience. I mean, I've obviously seen people get into like shouting matches or stuff like this. I mean, I don't know if this is the worst. It's almost like the funniest. It's just like, no, it's not funny. Okay, like basically someone was like playing pretty deep in a tournament, and in that particular environment, for some reason, the security just wasn't really too serious. Like, the public rail was just like right behind the table. It was final two tables of a relatively serious event. And it was like Friday night. So like, it's like party time at the casino, And then like the guy's like, can you like step back a bit? He was like reasonable, but like a little bit on the firm side. And they were making fun of him. They're like, oh mate, like, you think I'm cheating? You think I'm trying to like see your cards, mate? And then the guy is just suddenly just like, get the fuck out of my face. Like, fuck you. Like, I was like, okay. So but it's kind of funny. So
yeah, that is pretty funny. That qualifies though. Yeah, shit, what was I gonna say? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I saw a headline recently. I didn't watch the video, but maybe I should. At I think it was a WSOP circuit event, but man flips 3 poker tables after losing hand. It was
I think I've seen like the GIF. Like I didn't open it to view it in full, but I think I've seen the table flip. Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. Bound to like it's almost surprising it doesn't happen more often. People are like everyone plays poker, right? Like there's a lot of angry people out there. It's like
the one place it wouldn't happen is Triton, but it's the one place that could deal with it because we already know the chip counts. The app's generally pretty correct.
Yeah, true.
All right, next one. Most over the top, stupid, maybe show offy purchase or expenditure night of partying relative to poker winnings, or
I feel like pretty good at this, honestly. Like I've obviously made some purchases and stuff that like are a little bit splashy or not that I maybe even regret, but like I've never been like one to like have a huge party after a win or something like that. I think pretty early, like when I first started playing poker, like I was still into sort of like very, very amateur, like not even reading books or anything. Like I like to take photos basically as a kid. And so I bought like a pretty nice camera, which I didn't really end up using. Actually, I did use it a bit, but I ended up like not using it. I think I sold it not too long after that. It was just too heavy to travel with. And it was always a security thing where it's like, if I travel with it, I have to look after it. I have to make sure it doesn't get wet. It doesn't get stolen. and it doesn't get damaged because it's kind of fragile. It was like really big and heavy, and then like camera phones just keep getting better and better. Like I think now without some proper train, like it's a good camera still, it's kind of timeless, but like without proper training, it's like my iPhone is just going to take better photos every time. With adjusting all the contrast and brightness and whatever it's called, shutter exposure levels and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shutter speed. Yeah, I had one of those, and I didn't realize you have to actually know what you're doing, and I kind of, had a couple of lessons from my buddy, but I wasn't a natural by any means and didn't want to put in the work. I was very grateful when my girlfriend took to it and kind of got into using it.
Yeah, I think that's actually maybe the answer. Like younger me would have maybe thought that I would have been like more into taking photos at this point, because it was kind of a not serious hobby, but like a pretty, decent hobby of mine, and then at some point I just stopped kind of, other than taking it on my phone, which
Yeah, I wonder how much the phone killed that hobby for a lot of people, just because you're like, these are damn good, but it's also like stops being nearly as special because everyone's doing it all the time, as opposed to like, this is your thing and you're very deliberate about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think like I remember back in, let's say, high school or something, there's bunch of spots where like I took the photos and then like almost nobody else did, and it's like kind of cool. But like now, I think it's so easy to do it, which is good. For the most part, I think on average, I think people probably it's a little bit dicey with social media these days, but for the most part, I think people maybe could take a little bit more photos. It's nice personally I find it nice to look back, like not that you look too often necessarily, but it's like pretty sick sometimes, like to have like a photo from 10 years ago and then you kind of remember some of that for a while and stuff.
All right, but you're reminiscing and enjoying this, and you're supposed to be squirming. These are shitty questions. I need to get back to the shittiness.
Okay.
What do we got here? This is... Shit, do I have any more? No, I don't. That was all
the best you can do.
Well, I have a separate game that's a one question game, which is this is what would you rather? And option one is that 1/3 of the time when you are bluffing on the river in live poker, you're going to get a cramp in your foot. That's going to be on the 1 to 10 for a foot cramp. It's going to bounce around between a 3 and a 7. It's never going to get to the most violent, awful cramp, but it's going to be something to deal with.
Is cramp different to pins and needles, or that's a very similar?
It is different from it. It's kind of like a lockup. Have you ever had it? You kind of like, for me, I kind of hit it or try to massage it to like, it just feels like you couldn't move. It's a weird, We might need to edit this. All right. You're going to get two choices as someone who hasn't had, or maybe we're not speaking the same language on a cramp.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Okay. Option B, also 1/3 of the time on the river, you are going to get a 9 out of 10 level itch on your nose that's going to appear every 5 seconds.
Only when I'm bluffing?
Only when you're bluffing, but it's only going to happen 1/3 of the time. So it's not something that you... What's that?
And people can figure this out in theory or no?
Whatever they want. They can do whatever they want with it. I mean, maybe you balance by 1/3 of the time when you have value, you do this. So, I mean, there's something you can do. Or...
Oh, sorry.
No. Option 3. Option 3 is, and this one's based on a real event for me. Not that this happened every time, but 1/3 of the time that you have any kind of thinking to do, you don't have like a snap decision where you kind of know what you want to do. Your AirPods, which you're going to have them in, are going to begin blaring this song.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close between 1 and 3. I think I slightly lean towards 3. Like, I feel like I can kind of, I guess, get hurt the least. Firstly, it's balanced so that I'm not... I feel like if my leg is just cramping or I'm super itchy every time, like sometimes when I'm bluffing, it's hard to like fake that, I think. So it's like, it'll be annoying, but I think it'll be, I guess, yeah, I'd probably take the music. Yeah.
Fair. You know what I might be underestimating? the first couple times the music might be especially distracting, but then it might actually be like a trigger to think. Like you might just kind of, it was just that for me, it came up because I opened EP in a 3500. I was playing at the Hard Rock, and I had like 80 bigs like coming up on the bubble, and maybe average was, let's say, 35, and big blind kind of nitty pro 3-bets me, and I've got kings, and I hear that just starts to crescendo, and I'm like, oh shit, here we go, we're getting it in. I remember immediately being like, pause the fucking music, I'm getting overwhelmed. Just felt my pulse race.
Yeah, I think the other two is just so hard to balance, and it's super annoying. I think the itch would be the worst for me. I don't know. I would find that just like very annoying. I think cramp, I didn't mind too much because I feel like it could almost be a distraction of sorts. That like if I'm bluffing and don't want to appear nervous, I can just focus on that like annoyance, and hopefully it's more towards the 3, 4, 5 rather than the 6 or 7. But I think the music I would be able to get used to, and obviously it's a bit of a distraction, but it's not as bad, I think.
Both for online and live, or take it however you like, but what does your D game look like, and how does that separate itself from your A game?
Yeah, so my D game, like, I think in general, I'm not too much of a tilter, I would say. So like my D game would probably just be like some combination of like not being well rested enough, like not really focusing, like maybe for example having too many tables, being a bit like maybe annoyed about whatever hands happened or something like that, and then just like you really want to think about all of the things that matter the most as much as possible, and then all of the things that don't matter as little as possible, right? So I think it might just be some situation where I'm thinking about too much of the stuff that doesn't matter basically, or what else is happening like in my life that day or that time, rather than the actual poker hands itself. And I'm sure there's been times where I'm like tilted or something, or like trying to like maybe my stack is like much less than it was an hour or like a minute ago or whatever, and then I'm like trying to get it back or something like that. I don't know.
Do you have any ways of catching those signals where you notice, hey, you know what, that's kind of a thought with my D game, that's not really my process on the turn when I'm able to ever kind of pull yourself out of it?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good at identifying like when I'm not in a good state of mind, I guess. And then pulling myself out of it. Yeah, I think it's depending on the situation or how much time I have or whatever, like a combination of, I don't know, maybe some stuff like deep breaths or like thinking rationally helps a lot. It's just like, oh, this is not going to help. Like this is not going to, it's not going to bring me towards my goal or whatever, or like what I want to do or what I want to achieve or compete or whatever. So I think it's, sorry.
You're good. Tell me about your relationship to studying, when you got into studying poker, if that was at the beginning or some point later, and how that's kind of evolved through the years.
So for me, honestly, studying and improving has been, I think, compared to a lot of my peers, a bit more on the just like learn by playing and talking to like other good players or stuff like this. So like directly opening some software, even in the early days when there was random programs like Sit and Go Wizard or Flopzilla, or I mean, I'm not saying these are bad programs, but just like whatever older ones. Sure. It hasn't really been my thing. Whereas like I think learning and then like active playing and like thinking a bit about like hands in game, but also afterwards all the time has been very helpful. Obviously, especially in the solver era, I have learned heaps from I guess solver outputs and stuff like this. But I think I've always learned best from I guess like talking to people and stuff, and I guess playing really. And there's a lot of different types of studying. I think that people might, or at least some people might underrate. I think there's like so many different ways, and of course some of them are more efficient. It's like how much time you put in and how much you get out of it. But like even just for example, I don't know, like watching like let's say like podcasts or YouTube. I mean, I'm not saying this is my study methods, but like these are stuff where you will learn and hopefully improve. And then, of course, playing, looking at hands that either you played or other people played, thinking about like their thought process. What is the logic, both in solver land or whatever, but also what people are doing or thinking in practice.
Yeah, I like what you said. I think when you compare, let's say, studying a solver output to something that, on the far reaches, watching a podcast, the idea is that you pretty much always know you're going to make some gains when you are looking at a solver output. At least understanding what equilibrium looks like a little bit better to, even if you don't agree with it, have an idea of how your opponents might be approaching a situation. But probably 9 times out of 10 watching a podcast, or at least let's say 9 minutes out of 10, aren't going to improve you. But when you do improve from something, when you do pick up, somebody phrases something in a certain way, or somebody points out like something that they tend to look for at the table and you've never thought about it, or like it passed you by like 10 years ago, you like thought about it once and then never really came back to it. Like that can be massive. And I think that's one of the things that maybe, I don't know about confuses. One of the things that makes the space a little bit, I guess, confusing is that there are a lot of ways to get returns that are reliable. And then there are these unreliable ways to get better at poker, but they might have very, very big gains. But I think a lot of people like the idea of always improving and knowing that, hey, if I put in time, I got better. But there's kind of like, I think I brought it up with somebody on the podcast before, but the explore and exploit. In a sense, working with a solver, you're exploring, but it's in what I would consider a limited space. It's within the confines of the game, and not really exploring people and some of the meta strategies that are outside of just what line am I going to take. And having a conversation with someone who thinks entirely differently from you, even if 9 times out of 10, you don't pick up anything that you're going to use for your game, that 1 out of 10 might be extremely valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just like, basically there's so many ways you can improve your win rate or your EV or something. So like obviously one of them is just making your actual game better, like whether that's looking at solvers, understanding like poker better. But there's like so many that I think like are kind of maybe underrated, especially by like maybe sort of up and coming players or something. So that's just anything from like getting good sleep, like having like a good, by the way, I'm not like saying that I am doing all these things great or anything, but like just as examples, like getting good sleep, having like a good physical, I guess like health or something, like, so like eating, I'm not saying you have to eat like chicken and salad every time, but like, just like having some basic understanding of which foods are like gonna give you like brain fog or stuff like this when you need to focus and perform. Not just the like obviously like the mental game stuff, as you said before, like having some idea when to notice that you're not playing your A game, how you can get out of your CED game, whatever, to play your A game as often as possible. Bankroll management, that's like a huge one. Control of like, all these things, like it's like people don't really consider this as what contributes to your EV or ROI or something, but like all of these things matter a lot. Like there's obviously, again, like the poker itself is very important, but like all these things are like stuff like live tells or understanding dynamics or like having a understanding of people in general, like how they are going to react in certain situations or there's so many things, like there's so many things that contribute to what a person's EV or ROI is, and so many of them it's hard to quantify exactly, obviously, but so many of them are not just like how well does this person know how to play each hand. It's just like, okay, how well are you at playing on the 10th hour or 12th hour after like in a 14-hour day? What about like the 10th day in like a really long trip, especially for something like Triton where it's so intense? Are you getting enough sleep, or like how many tables should you play? Like how much game selection should you be doing? Like there's so many things, like that's more for online, but like there's so many things that you can do to improve your EV or whatever for the year or for the day or whatever.
Yeah, I'll tell you like an example, because I do a lot of coaching, and one of the trickiest things to respond to is when I get a hand history, like someone's playing in a 2K in Vegas where there's really good players in those tournaments and there's really bad players in those tournaments and everywhere in between. And they say like open hijack, big blind, random 40-year-old dude that I don't know shoves 28 bigs. What do we do with ace jack suited? I don't know. I mean, like, and looking up a solver is not actually the most important thing here. What's really important is like, ask the guy at the table who knows that dude and called him by his first name. Ask him on break what he thinks about it. Like, that conversation is going to be worth a ton more because it might have been terrible.
Right.
The guy shows up with kings and you're like, okay, that was certainly bad. But the guy shows up with fives and I don't know if it was bad or not. Probably wasn't. Probably was fine. But there's, the one data point, whether you call or fold, is not going to be everything usually. And just talking to someone who knows the situation or has a feel for that player could be worth a ton. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that's like, I mean, there's so many situations where looking it up is pretty much useless in my opinion. Like the one you just said, it's like, sure, you can open up like a calculator and enter some different ranges. You can give an optimistic range or like a loose range. You can give a tight range and see, this is stuff that like everybody should at some point in their poker life do manually, like check what is your equity of certain hands against like loose ranges, tight ranges, how loose does it need to be? Like how much you want to give yourself some room? Like what, it's this sort of stuff that like everybody really needs to do. And I think now it's tempting to just like look at like, oh, cutoff versus big blind for 28 bigs. This is the range, it's just not, it's like not good.
I'll give you another example. I mentioned this in a conversation with Dan Smith that I think we're releasing tomorrow for what it's worth. But one of the things I really gained from coaching, and I mean, South Florida is kind of a mecca of poker, but is talking to a lot of players and finding out that like they just folded, 9-7 suited in the big blind to your open. And you're just like, that wasn't on my radar. Like, yeah, I did see that guy folded 7 out of 10 big blinds, but it's just not a remarkable, amount of data that I would think anything. But then you get in conversation with him and he's just like, yeah, I mean, the rest of the table are really bad players and you and I are good. And why am I going to defend 9-7 suited against you? You're going to put a lot of holy cow. I need to approach everything way differently. And I think a lot of people, especially young players who grew up with solvers and grow up in, tight-knit communities of really sharp guys studying, they can be blown away by how other people are approaching this game, especially in the low and mid stakes, not so much in the high stakes, of course.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's at like lower stakes, it's even more common. But like, honestly, I think people might be surprised. Like even at the highest stakes, like I can think of a couple examples of like good accomplished players who their approach is just a bit less solvery and they're just like, oh, you know what? Like, I think it's a good tournament. Like I'm going to defend a bit tighter here because it's a good player. I mean, like, obviously, again, it's always a spectrum, but like for sure, there's some very good respected players who have more this sort of approach.
Very different ideas on edge passing in future game are still going to, like that's just not solved out stuff. It's up in the air. And so you still have some really different opinions.
Yeah.
Introducing the GTO LAB ICM Trainer. Train all positions at once. The new and better way of learning poker tournaments. Master all stages of the tournament. Pre-bubble, bubble, in the money, 2 and 3 tables left, and the final table. Learn how to crush tournaments from our coaches and get the most out of the trainer. We have the biggest ICM library ever with over 14,000 solutions created by Nick Petrangelo and Daniel Dvoress. Join GTO LAB today and stay ahead of the curve.
I'm with you. Who's somebody that's relatively new to the high stakes scene that you think is really good and has a lot of potential, showing you something?
I mean, really, it kind of depends. I think like a lot of the people, it's hard to say because it's like a lot of these people have already got so many achievements that it's kind of like I don't want to make it seem like like they're I don't know. I'm not. I think like most of the sort of new, I think anyone who's gotten to the point where they can play like, the biggest stakes online or live, and regardless of how good they are right now, like I think they have some potential for sure. It's hard to say, like, obviously a lot of things are gonna, whether it's luck or, soft skills and stuff like that will determine like where they'll be in 3 years or something. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of, sorry, I have a better answer than that.
What exists for you in the space between knowledge and execution? I don't think any of us would claim that we're 100% if we are knowledgeable about a situation that we always execute perfectly?
So I think like generally execution is one of my strengths. I would say like I mean, as everything else, it's kind of a spectrum, but like, I'm, it's not like I'm sick at it or something, but like, I think in general, I'm leaning towards a little bit on the, like, not afraid to look stupid kind of thing. Like I kind of am kind of happy with my, I guess like position in poker or whatever. Like I have enough confidence that like, I know that like, basically I like to kind of follow my gut, like, for the most part. There's obviously, again, it's like a spectrum, but like if I think something is right, I will lean towards doing it. And I'll just sort of accept that like sometimes it's gonna look like really dumb or stupid or just be a punt, a huge punt even. So yeah, and I think like, and I think this having the background of coming from a relatively more street style in the past, where like even before solvers, there was people who approached the game like more from a quote unquote theoretical style, and I kind of freestyled a little bit more, and I think that has sort of stuck with me to some extent. Obviously, not like you can only do it so much, but yeah, I think usually I'm not too afraid to execute. I think this is something that people might underrate, where like people who have like, from the outside, like let's say run good, and I'm not necessarily talking about myself. I'm also not excluding myself, but let's just say like people have run good, had really good results or something, and then people will be like, okay, this person's not that good or something, and it can be the case. But one thing people I think underrate is that like when you've had so much experience playing like final 2 tables, final tables, final 3, whatever, like it's worth something, it's like, someone could have studied infinite and like never played a big final table before, and I think I would just take the guy who's played like 40 final tables where there was $1 million for first or something like that. It's like at least the first time. It's really easy to overlook like how much it matters to have actually played in real life with like those stakes like 40, 50 times or however many times, compared to someone who like knows the theory really well, but like they haven't been there ever, or like maybe they've been there once or something, and and so yeah, I think I mean, I'm not saying like I've had like so much experience at those specifics, but just like let's say reasonably big final tables, if you include online, like I've been there enough that like if I punt it off, it's not going to ruin probably not even my day. Really, I mean, punt is a strong word, but like let's say like it doesn't go well, it's okay. Like I'm going to live with my life. I'm happy. Like it's okay. I'm willing to accept the fact that like maybe I got 8 when most people would have never busted that hand, and it doesn't really change anything. Whereas like if it's a really big deal for you, like yeah, I mean that can be like a disadvantage, And I think that's one of the underlooked things about like taking shots that are too big, is that like if the shot kind of goes well and you get deep enough, like sometimes it matters too much, like and you're not wanted to, like you want to be able to be like, okay, I want to play the right thing, whatever that means, but I don't think you necessarily want it to be that you're playing at a final table where like it's life-changing money,
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Jonathan Little was the first person I heard this from. He would like tell the poker coaching community, like, don't play satellites, because that means that you can't afford that tournament. I mean, maybe if that's your grind, but like if you're playing 1Ks live, don't play a 1K satellite to a 10K. You're going to play like shit in the 10K. Obviously understand the flip side of like the fun of taking a shot, especially if you're recreational. But yeah, I mean, like for a living, that's kind of a stupid thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a like I understand it's like the cliche poker dream, but I think it can definitely be a bit of an overrated thing to like, oh, I got in for 1K, that means that now I can just take all of myself in this.
All right, this is maybe first time the game has been requested. So all you haters who give me shit about the game, I get really mixed reviews about it. I get a bunch of people coming up to me and telling me they love it, but maybe they just like my enthusiasm. Maybe they just know it'll make me happy. And I've had a few people be like, scratch the game, dude. Come on. Like, why?
I'm kind of surprised that there's like, I mean, I can see why like people might not love it, but I'm surprised that people dislike it enough to be like, you should get rid of it, I don't know.
I mean, in fairness, it's the internet, and like there are just always going to be some people who have like no barrier to voicing an opinion, which is something to be said for it. If you do it nicely, it's fine. Nobody's been nasty about it. Okay. Anyway, we're playing the game, motherfuckers. David asked for it. So
every episode had it so far, so I thought you missed it,
I appreciate it. We're going with you asked for it. Triton is changing their catchphrase or whatever you want to call it, their slogan. I think it's something like where high stakes dreams are dealt. Yeah. This is their new phrase. And you are CEO of Triton. You just want to make a good slogan that attracts people. So obviously 2 is just wretched and ace is what you think would be great. Okay. Very tough if you have a high card to think of a great slogan. So I'll give you time.
Like, is it like how good it is in terms of like from marketing perspective, like how sort of like if I'm the owner or the backer of Triton, how happy I would be that my marketing team is pushing this out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a combination of one, wanting to attract people, the audience that they want, the players that they hope to capture, but also maintain some credibility and not sound like silly fucks.
Okay. Okay, I got maybe only the highest stakes.
Only the highest stakes. Alex Kulev is going to be competing against Alex Foxen in something. Doesn't have to be a real competition like a spelling bee. It could be, you know, stacking pennies on their head, whatever you want. You have to bet on Alex Foxen. So 8 is something that you think they're kind of like dead even at or whatever, you know.
Okay.
You're betting on Foxen. Aces, you feel like a lock for Foxen to win.
Okay.
By the way, Kulev and I played the game for like 4 hours straight in Jeju. He loved it. He somehow I didn't do it in his episode, and you never found a bigger enthusiast. I was touched.
All right, going grocery shopping and enjoying it. Is that
enjoying grocery shopping? You're picking Foxen over Kulev. Fucking A. All right. Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm gonna break this down. The only the highest stakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're clearly somewhere in the middle. You haven't like neither Kulev nor Foxen is a lock to enjoy grocery shopping more. Foxen, to me, is the easy pick to enjoy grocery shopping more because we know he's extremely health conscious. And so for people who are very into fitness, I think there's a hobby element to what they ingest. I mean, there's a good chance neither of them actually grocery shop, that they both just pick it out online. That being said, so I feel like it's not an 8. I feel like it's a 9 or a 10. We're in 9 or 10 zone, and only the highest stakes. The problem, like, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm free rolling myself a little here, but my read based on game conditions is a 9. But my actual answer on those answers is a 10. I'm going 10.
Nah, 7. I think, yeah.
Kulev more than Foxen for the grocery shopping. I mean, totally reasonable, but let's hear it out. I'm curious.
Nah, I don't know. I just thought of like trying to do something kind of fun or funny, and then I didn't really think
it is funny. I like it.
Yeah, I just didn't think about the logic too much. I don't know. I just imagined him doing it, and then I didn't think about it too logically.
There was a game show way back in the day. I don't know exactly what they're supposed to do. Have you ever seen this?
Okay, just look out there. Everything in our supermarket is all yours. You just grab anything you want. On your mark, get set, go, Edie.
And here comes Edie on her big sweep. Whenever a shopper has a good lead in time, it's always interesting to see what she'll do first. What does Edie do first? Grab a bonus. It's a grizzly bear, and he's just the right size to fit into her cart. But there's still room for more, like these giant jugs of liquid Tide. Back at the counter, Team 3 is busy mapping out their first move.
All right. A shot at redemption, because I did miss by 3. That's a tough loss.
Yeah, I blame myself.
I've had worse ones. You're good. You are at a Triton table with all regs. Everybody has been dosed with 200 micrograms of LSD. And they are doing their best, for whatever that means, to continue playing the poker tournament and be as normal as they can be. One player at the table was not dosed. The question is, who would be the slowest to pick up on the fact that everybody else is tripping balls out of a Triton reg? Ace is whoever you think would have the least chance of putting this together. 2 is whoever's going to suss this out immediately.
Two is the best at figuring it out, right?
Yeah. 2 is the best at figuring it out. Ace is the guy who gets fooled. And I got to give you a card.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, here's your card.
Hang on. Just keep holding it. It's adjusting. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Go jungle, man.
Jungle. All right. Question 2. This is a high stakes professional poker player who is going to be your children's elementary school teacher. They have stopped playing. Oh, there's my son. They've stopped playing poker professionally to pursue elementary education.
Elementary specifically.
They're going to do all 4 years with your child between the ages of 5 and 9. We'll say they're going to be their teacher.
Okay. Huh.
We're going to say they drop out right now, and then they take a 3-month crash course in how to be an elementary school teacher, and now they're in.
Okay.
And in this case, of course, Ace is best. This is who you want, and 2 is who you don't.
Yeah. Let's go with let's go with Brian Kim.
Brian Kim? Okay. So Jungle almost could have been the ace for not picking up on the psychedelic, so I thought I might hear Lucky Chewy. Brian's going to be a great elementary school teacher. That's a given. I mean, in a world of people who, and I don't mean this as a slight, except if you're trying to be an elementary school teacher, are not the most normal group of people, Brian's got some very good normal qualities. He can hang with the common man. He can converse with parents. Nobody's embarrassed to bring Brian Kim back to the family. Back to, I mean, I guess, yeah, I do think normal is kind of important for an elementary school teacher. Not the most important, but anyway, Brian's sharp. He's great with people. He's a compassionate fella. I think he's patient. I don't really know. I've never really tested his patience. He tilts in tennis. Maybe that's not great. All right, back to Jungle trying to figure out that people are on psychedelics. It's not going to be great, even if he's done a chunk of them. And some of that wardrobe implies he's got some history.
Jungle.
I mean, yeah, there's just some people who haven't even like thought about doing psychedelics that might have a tougher time, and like they might think people are on cocaine, like not have any idea. Queen.
Yeah, good.
Let's go. We got one. Nicely done. Yeah, I like that. I like Jungle as a queen. You could jump to ace, but I don't think it's right. That was my instinct.
Yeah, I think like ace, like maybe just like some Asian person who has no background of that.
So we're looking at a hand of yours from Triton Monte Carlo, I believe.
Yeah.
Thank you to my poker coaching hand replayer. Start winning casinos, as you pointed out. And this is going to be Luke Greenwood opening from the hijack.
Yeah.
We're at an early stage, and you defend 10-4 of diamonds.
Yeah.
Got the Jack 9-8, goes check, check. First question, just kind of playing your range from the hijack on this texture, if you want to talk about that at all. Luke's spot here.
Yeah, I would imagine quite a lot of bidding, but as with a lot of boards, you can play some checks and stuff. I think you can pretty much, you can probably bet most hands, but you can definitely also check, and then if you check, you're gonna mix it up with all sorts of hands. Yeah.
Check. Turn is an offsuit ace, and you're immediately presented with a decision. Want to take us through how you see your range in this situation?
See my range?
Your range and then your decision with your actual hand.
Yeah, so I think in general, mostly pretty good turn for the hijack. But probably I should have more nuts at least, because like even if hijack is doing some slow playing or trapping or whatever, they're definitely going to want to bet like, let's say queen 10 most of the time, if not always. So yeah, I think mostly I want to bet very big or not, because I'm mostly interested in betting like very polarized with like really good hands for the most part. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's like some multiple sizing thing going on here, where you have some sort of like good hands and then great hands kind of thing. Yeah, I don't think you want to bet too many medium hands.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be great hands only, in which case it would be very polarized. But otherwise, yeah, probably like multiple sizings with like some, yeah, very like sort of defined as like a good ace or better, some sort of category. Yeah.
Makes sense. So you go for check, and Luke bets 2.5 into 6.5. So
Yeah.
what is this, around 40%?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your options, and then I'll show what you did.
Yeah, so with my particular hand, obviously can never fold. I think calling, even though some people might think it's not an option because you have no showdown, and sometimes on the river you just lose. I don't think that's how it works. I think you can sometimes just check call with a hand like this and then be okay that like sometimes it's just going to go check and you're going to lose to like king 7 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or any hand really. But yeah, like, so I think check calling is an option, I believe. But I think with a hand like this, you're basically raising and for the most part representing a very polarized range. In other words, some mix of draws and that type of hand, and like really good hands makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what you did. You went to a really large size, 25 big blinds, and seeing this hand reminded me of a hand that Adamo played during a time when I wasn't really playing almost any poker. I was playing some deep stack cash, but in a soft game. And I don't know if you remember it, and I don't know the spec. Yeah. It's like a low board, a low straighty board, and it goes check, check. And then the turn is an ace, and Adamo checks and just, I mean, I think it was an even bigger raise than this, maybe.
They were deeper,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, they're deeper. Yeah, it was maybe like 250 deep or something.
Or something.
Yeah, maybe he had a straight. I can't remember. But yeah, Adamo had it, whatever it was. And maybe it was a set. I don't think he blocked the ace. But let's say, I'm sorry to both parties involved, this is not going to be right, but let's say with like a 4-5-7 ace, and Mike has value. And he checks, and Dean Eggs bets somewhere around half pot, and Mike just goes massive. Dean Eggs calls with ace king, river I think is a brick, and Damo shoves and stacks Negreanu for like 200 plus BB. Apologies if I'm just completely wrong on this hand history, but the point is the size he used on the turn. I had like 5 people send me that hand, and they were just like, what is going on here? This is sick. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that shit. I probably need to learn it.
Yeah, I think kind of similar situation here, really, where we have some like really good hands, and it's almost less about me trying to like bluff and put pressure, is more just like as part of an overall strategy that like I do actually have good hands which want value, so I need to find some bluffs. And then when you're putting in so much money, it's nice to have like equity and or blockers if possible. Not always, but it's it's good to have some outs to hands that can continue to get more value. That can get value when they improve, and possibly bluff when it doesn't improve still.
Do you use that way of thinking in nearly every spot? Is it's not necessarily about the bluffs, it's that I have value in a given situation that wants to put X amount of money in, and now let's find the bluffs? Is that I'm kind of turning this into a little bit of a coaching thing, but would you suggest that path of thinking for people when they're?
So I don't, yeah, for me, it depends on the spot. I don't always think like that. But I think for most people, especially if they're sort of, still learning or whatever, I think it is a good, like in game, you don't always want to do it. Like there's probably just players, especially non-pros or something that you might not want to bluff against or something, or you want to always bluff or whatever. But I think it's good to always ask yourself questions such as like, whether you're reviewing or playing in game, like, what is my value here? Like, let's say you have a bluff or semi-bluff or whatever. What is my value here? What does my value want to do? What size is my value on a bit? And other way around as well. Like, if you have value, you can think about like, what are my bluffs? Like, if you know that you don't have bluffs, like, maybe size accordingly or something. I think like some simple shortcuts that you can kind of, especially as like just to simplify things for yourself when you're still learning, you can on the river, like if you're not sure what size to bet, you can think like, what's the worst hand I want to bet for value? How much does that hand want to bet? Like stuff like this,
Yep, I like it. So you go 25, and Luke does call. Offsuit King River, 1.8, 1.9 to 1 SPR. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so I think firstly, maybe I could have gone even bigger on the turn, depending on how I see my range. But yeah, I think here, pretty much I'm not sure about sizes, but basically either you want to, like I think I definitely want to have some hands that shove, and then potentially also have a big size that's not shove. For example, maybe a hand like a set or something. But I think that can probably just shove as well, actually. So maybe I just most of it. Like for example, let's say I have a hand like 8-9, and I think it would be quite an overplay to go massive on turn and now bet big if at all. So I'm mostly looking to have like a very good 2-pair or better or something. So yeah, I want to I think in terms of which bluffs to use, I don't think any of them in particular are good or bad, and I think it's more important to find the frequency. I think that's, to be honest, true in general, but especially in this spot. I think it's not so much like which cards do I want to have or not have. I mean, all else equal, probably having like a 10 is going to be better than like not. I mean, a big part of my range will be like Queen 10, having offsuit and suited, 10-7 suited, maybe 10-7 off as well. Like a big part of my value range. So I think just having a 10 is, sort of makes sense in that regard. So like preferring to have like a hand like this one, like compared to like say 5-6 of diamonds or something. Although like I don't necessarily hate bluffing that either. I mean some things want to give up. So yeah, I guess generally having the 10 seems good.
Got it. Okay.
And then I think he's just gonna have a bunch of, so he might have like some traps or solo plays or something, or like maybe a hand like a set of aces or something if he plays it like this. But other than that, I think most hands are going to be catchers, like bluff catchers against the value range I'm representing. So I think it's also kind of similar where like he doesn't necessarily have particularly better or worse card. Like, does it matter if he has ace 8 or ace king? Not so much, unless I guess ace jack is part of the range, but like could be part of the range. But like yeah, I guess like ace 10, like I think he actually had. Yeah, but he does block some bluffs and value. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense to call a hand like that since.
Seems really convoluted if you're Luke trying to figure out if that 10 of spades is a good card or a bad card.
Right, yeah.
Feels good to me because it's not the 10 of diamonds, and maybe you're check raising a lot less bluffs with the 10 of spades. I don't really. I mean, I guess it's like 10-8.
Yeah,
10-9.
I think it's probably slightly better to not have a diamond, I guess. And then yeah, I don't know. It's just like, what is it? 4 queen 10 to more, right? No, 4. Yeah, 4 queen 10, 1 10 7 suited, and maybe 4 10 7 off, depending if he thinks I have that pre or not. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Not in particular. I mean, just in general, like I guess that, I would recommend people to, try to be open-minded when it comes to poker. Try to talk to people who lean towards being open-minded, like not too much of like, everybody sucks, like this hand was bad, blah, blah, blah. More, what are people doing? Why are they doing it? Why could this be good? And then again, like remember to just like think about that. Or there's like a lot of two different people could either take two different paths and come to like a very similar endpoint. And similarly with like it's the same like in tourneys, like two people can have two completely different finish distributions. Like one person could be like way more like tight on bubbles and like looking to make their min cash, and then somebody else could be like way more like a top heavy style where they win a lot but they don't cash very often, and they can have exactly the same ROI. So it's like there's a lot of things like this. And as I said before, like don't underestimate like soft skills. Obviously how good you are at poker is one thing, but like how often can you execute, play your A game, not play your D game, tilt control, like getting sleep, knowing when you should maybe sit out. Like if you're just, if you're not in the right headspace or mind space, maybe skip that Sunday, maybe take a day off during a series. Like, do you really need to play that Thursday or Friday or whatever day it is, when there's just like 2-3 weeks of crazy stakes ahead? Enjoy your life.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you make a lot of really good points, and there's this wave of momentum towards things that are, I don't know about tangible, but easier to see. Like we talked about the returns on studying with a solver as opposed to the returns of, I don't know if we would call it studying, but listening to a podcast. It's just the momentum keeps pushing in one direction, and it's very difficult for some of these soft skills to make the sales pitch. There's nobody out there, at least in the poker space, trying to sell you on how to get an extra hour of sleep. There's no melatonin dealers, not that melatonin's good for you, but you know what I mean? It's, I do think that there tends to be one of the things that feels like you're getting at is too much focus in certain corners of the world when you're trying to have a career in poker, and maybe not as much focus in some of the more amorphous conversations.
Yeah, it's not as like glamorous or exciting or fun or whatever, but like to like poker fans or something like that, it's just like it wouldn't come to mind that like, oh, having a good night's sleep or something is like important, I guess, or whatever. Yeah.
I made a joke actually early on when I got asked to host this podcast. I'm like, I'm not just going to keep asking high stakes players how you get better sleep. Like, I can't do this. I can't have Huberman Lav GTO, but it's like, it is really important. And it's what the high stakes guys often want to talk about is like how you manage to get your exercise and your sleep and take care of whatever little things you need to do just to take care of yourself, and then go play your A game, 10 days in a row at a stop. For, most of us who've played poker for a long time, that's some of the more, I don't know about interesting stuff, but important stuff.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. All right. 3 recommendations, please. Any kind, anything you feel the audience might get some entertainment or utility out of.
Maybe like, visit New Zealand. I think it's like a great country to visit. I know it's like really far for a lot of people. I think like if you're from maybe like Canada or something, it might be a little bit less worth it because there's a lot of the appeal is similar, like the beautiful nature or something. But yeah, no, I think it's great. Like great way to. It's just like so the opposite of is like sparsely populated. It's like in some places it's just like miles of beautiful nature, and then there's like almost no one there, but it's still like developed enough that you're not really living in like an undeveloped situation. It's like very much first world, and beautiful, lots of stuff to do. Particularly in the summer or warmer times, I would probably recommend, but you can also do some stuff during winter for sure. Secondly,
New Zealand is actually number 1 on my list of places I want to visit. Although I do, along with your initial caveat, I would like to teleport there. So if that technology comes along, I'm in. But I want to wait until my son gets more out of it, and then I want to have a family trip there because it just seems amazing.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I know it's not like practical for everyone, but maybe get a dog. I don't know. It's great. It's like, can recommend that. I think
We just got a dog a month ago. I'm really on top of your Rex.
Yeah. No, I think it's yeah, a lot of good things about it. I think like I didn't have any pets growing up and stuff, and I just recently got one, and yeah, I think it's a lot of good things. Help you keep active with it. Border collie.
Nice.
Yeah, it's help you keep active, and I think it's like it'll be hard to find someone who loves you as much, like always excited to see you and stuff like this. So then I don't know, get a Dyson vacuum cleaner, or like doesn't have to be Dyson brand, but just get like a good vacuum cleaner. I don't know, I think it's like fun to vacuum clean. It's like sounds a bit random and silly, but just get a good quality vacuum cleaner if you can afford. I mean, it's like I know it's kind of a luxury, but like I know it's kind of a luxury, but like it's just, I don't know, like why not? Just it's convenient, it's useful, it's versatile. What can I say? And
my affiliate code for Dyson will be at the bottom of the video. And, no, I'm with you. I think it's pretty satisfying when you vacuum and you just see this streak of cleanliness where all you did was push.
I don't know. It's good. Like, why would you want to live in dust?
It's true. Don't play like dust. Don't live in dust.
Yeah.
David Yan, thank you. Really appreciate it.
All good.